Sarah Martinez never expected her morning shift at the diner to end with smoke, shattered glass, and the screams of a trapped woman. But there she was, crawling through twisted metal to pull a stranger from a burning wreck. Her hands were bleeding. Her uniform was ruined, and her manager would definitely fire her for abandoning her tables. None of that mattered. Not when someone's life hung in the balance. The woman she saved disappeared into the night with barely a thank you, leaving Sarah to return to her normal life of endless bills and late rent notices. Then came the morning. Sarah saw those same haunting eyes staring back at her from an FBI wanted poster, and she realized her act of kindness had entangled her in something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. What would you do if the person whose life you saved turned out to be one of America's most wanted criminals? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The stack of bills on Sarah's kitchen counter seemed to grow taller every day, like some kind of twisted paper garden fed by her mounting desperation. She stood there in her cramped apartment kitchen at 5:30 a.m., mechanically stirring instant coffee while trying to make the numbers add up differently than they had the night before. They never did. "Mom, are you okay?" Emma's voice cut through her thoughts. Her 12-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, already dressed for school in the second-hand clothes they'd found at Goodwill last weekend. Even in the dim morning light, Sarah could see how the jeans were a little too short, marking yet another growth spurt they couldn't afford. "I'm fine, baby." Sarah forced a smile, quickly shuffling the bills into a messy pile and shoving them into a drawer. "Just thinking about what to pack for your lunch." Emma's eyes, so much like her father's, lingered on the drawer. She was getting too old to believe the easy lies, too observant to miss the worry lines etching themselves deeper into her mother's face. "I can skip lunch today. Jessica always shares her—" "No." Sarah's tone was firm but gentle. "We don't skip meals in this house. I've got everything under control." The lie tasted bitter, but it was better than the truth, that after paying the rent, electricity, and Emma's school supplies, they were down to their last $73 until payday. That Sarah had been taking extra shifts at Mel's diner, working until her feet felt like they were made of broken glass. That sometimes, in the quietest hours of the night, she still reached across the bed for Mike, only to find empty space where her husband used to be. 3 years. 3 years since the accident that took him from them, leaving behind nothing but memories, a pile of medical bills, and a life insurance policy that barely covered the funeral costs. Sarah glanced at the photo on the fridge. Mike in his paramedic uniform, grinning at the camera with that crooked smile that had made her fall in love with him 15 years ago. Some days she could almost hear him saying, "You've got this, babe, one day at a time." Here, Sarah pulled out the last of the bread and started making Emma's lunch. "PB&J, apple, and I think we still have some of those granola bars you like." Emma watched her mother work, her young face carrying a weight no 12-year-old should have to bear. "I got an A on my math test yesterday. Mrs. Peterson said I might be able to skip ahead to advanced classes next year." Pride bloomed in Sarah's chest, temporarily pushing aside the gnawing anxiety. "That's amazing, sweetheart. We should celebrate. Maybe this weekend we can—" Her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a text from her manager at the diner. "Need you to come in early. Jen called out sick again." Sarah's heart sank. She was supposed to take Emma to the library this afternoon, had promised to help her with research for her science project. Another promise she'd have to break. "Something came up at work?" Emma asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm sorry, baby. We'll do the library tomorrow, okay? Mrs. Rodriguez can watch you after school today." Emma nodded, that too mature understanding in her eyes making Sarah's chest ache. "It's okay, Mom. I know you're doing your best." Sarah pulled her daughter into a tight hug, breathing in the scent of drugstore shampoo and something indefinably Emma. "I love you more than anything in this world, you know that?" "I know, Mom. I love you too." After dropping Emma at school, Sarah hurried to the diner, her worn sneakers slapping against the cracked sidewalk. The morning air was thick with humidity, promising another scorching day in their small Texas town. Mel's Diner sat on the corner of Main and Oak, its neon sign flickering weakly in the growing dawn. The same sign that had been temporarily broken for the 3 years she'd worked there. Inside, the usual morning regulars were already settling into their favorite booths. Old Mr. Peterson with his black coffee and newspaper, the construction crew from the site down the street, their orange vests like warning beacons in the diner's fluorescent lighting. Carol, the retired teacher who always left exactly 15% tip, calculated down to the penny. "You're late," Barry snapped as Sarah tied her apron. Her manager's face was red with either anger or the perpetual heat from the kitchen, probably both. Jen's section is completely backed up. Table. 6 has been waiting 10 minutes for coffee. "I'm sorry, I had to drop Emma at—" "I don't need excuses. I need you to do your job and fix your uniform. You look like you slept in it." Sarah bit back a retort. She couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how much Barry's constant criticisms made her want to throw her apron in his face. Instead, she grabbed her order pad and plastered on her best customer service smile, the one that made her cheeks ache by the end of each shift. The morning rush blurred into an endless cycle of coffee refills, orders called back to the kitchen, and the constant mental math of calculating tips. Every dollar counted, every extra bit of kindness that might convince a customer to round up their tip mattered. She was so focused on keeping her tables happy that she almost missed the conversation. At the counter, "Did you hear about that crash on Highway 23 last night?" One of the regulars, a truck driver named Pete, was saying. "Total mess. Car went right through the guardrail." Sarah's hand froze in the act of pouring coffee. Images flashed through her. Mind, twisted metal, shattered glass, the smell of gasoline and fear. The woman's eyes, wide with terror, then that strange calm as she disappeared into the night. "Anyone hurt?" Carol asked, looking up from her crossword puzzle. "Nah, driver was gone by the time police got there. Probably drunk, is my guess. Left the car burning on the side of the road." Sarah's uniform suddenly felt too tight, the diner too warm. The coffee pot trembled slightly in her hand. Dark liquid, sloshing dangerously close to the rim. She forced herself to keep moving, to act normal, even as her mind raced. They were talking about her rescue. Had to be. But why hadn't the woman waited for the police? Why disappear like that? She made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot, her thoughts constantly drifting back to the previous night. The woman's face was becoming harder to remember clearly, like a dream that fades upon waking. But those eyes, there had been something in them, something beyond just fear of the crash, something that made Sarah's skin prickle with belated warning. When her shift finally ended, Sarah counted her tips with shaking fingers. $72. Not bad for a morning shift, but not enough. Never enough. She changed out of her uniform, noticing for the first time the small tears and scorch marks from the rescue. Another expense she couldn't afford. The walk to the bank felt longer than usual, each step heavy with exhaustion. She had just enough time to deposit her tips and pick up Emma from school. Maybe they could still salvage part of the afternoon, even if the library trip was postponed. Emma had been so understanding lately, so mature about their situation, too mature. Sometimes Sarah wondered if her daughter was handling everything better than she was. The bank was busy, the line moving at a glacial pace. Sarah stood between a man in a business suit and an elderly woman with a floral purse, trying not to fidget. Her eyes wandered to the bulletin board near the entrance, covered in community notices and wanted posters. And there, between a missing cat poster and an advertisement for a local church bake sale, was a face that stopped her heart. The woman from the crash stared back at her from an FBI Most Wanted poster. The photo was clearly a few years old. The hair was different, longer and darker, but those eyes were unmistakable. The same eyes that had locked with Sarah's as she pulled the woman from the burning car. The same eyes that had held that strange, knowing look before their owner vanished into the darkness. The text below the photo swam before Sarah's vision. Catherine Pierce, wanted for conspiracy, fraud and accessory to murder. Considered armed and dangerous. Do not approach. Sarah's legs went weak. The $72 in her hand suddenly felt like evidence of something, though she wasn't sure what. Her act of instinctive heroism had just become something else entirely, something dangerous. Behind her, the man in the suit cleared his throat impatiently. Sarah stumbled forward to the next available teller, her mind spinning with questions she was afraid to even form fully. What had she gotten herself involved in? What would happen when the FBI inevitably tracked down witnesses to the crash? What might Catherine Pierce do to protect her identity? And most terrifying of all, what would happen to Emma if her mother was pulled into something she couldn't escape? Sarah barely slept that night. Every car that passed their apartment made her tense, waiting for the screech of brakes or the flash of police lights. Emma had noticed something was wrong during dinner, but Sarah brushed off her questions with practiced excuses about work stress and bills. The lies were getting easier to tell. That scared her almost as much as the wanted poster. Morning brought no clarity, just the local newspaper on her doorstep with its front-page headline, "Mystery Crash on Highway 23, Driver Flees Scene." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the article, searching for any mention of witnesses. There wasn't much, just vague details about a silver sedan, a damaged guardrail, and speculation about drunk driving. No mention of a heroic waitress or the woman she'd pulled from the wreckage. The article felt wrong somehow, like a story with crucial pages missing. Sarah knew she should be relieved that her name wasn't mentioned, but something about the sparse details made her uneasy. It was as if someone had deliberately kept the story small, insignificant. "Mom?" Emma stood in the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder. "We're going to be late." Sarah quickly folded the paper, tucking it into her bag. "Sorry, sweetie. Just checking the sales ads." Another lie to add to the growing pile. The drive to Emma's school was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. Sarah kept checking the rear-view mirror, not sure what she was looking for, but unable to stop herself. At a red light, she noticed dark circles under her eyes in the mirror, making her look older than her 34 years. "Are you sure you're okay?" Emma asked as they pulled up to the school. "You seem different since yesterday." Sarah forced a smile. "Just tired, baby. You know how Barry gets when someone calls in sick." Emma didn't look convinced, but she leaned over to kiss her mother's cheek before climbing out. "Love you, Mom. Love you more," Sarah called after her, watching until Emma disappeared into the building. Only then did she let her smile fall away, replaced by the worry she'd been holding back. The diner was quieter than usual when she arrived. A few regulars nursed coffee cups, but the usual morning rush seemed subdued. Sarah tied her apron with mechanical movements, her mind still churning with questions about Catherine Pierce and what she might have gotten herself involved in. "Martinez!" Barry's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway of his office, face set in its usual scowl. "My office now!" Sarah's heart hammered as she followed him inside. The small room smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener, walls covered in schedules and health code certificates. Barry settled behind his desk, the chair creaking under his weight. "Want to explain why you abandoned your tables last night?" Sarah hesitated. She hadn't prepared for this conversation, hadn't thought about how to explain her actions without mentioning the crash. There was an emergency. An emergency. Barry's tone made it clear he didn't believe her. "Important enough to leave paying customers waiting? Someone needed help. I couldn't just, your job is to serve food and keep customers happy. That's it." He leaned forward, his desk cluttered with paperwork and coffee-stained menus. "One more stunt like that and you're done. Understand?" Sarah nodded, relief mixing with lingering anxiety. At least he wasn't firing her outright. It won't happen again. Better not. Now get out there. Table 4's been waiting. She hurried back to the dining room, grabbing her order pad with shaking hands. As she approached table 4, she noticed something odd. The booth was empty, except for a folded newspaper and what looked like a generous tip. Several $20 bills folded neatly under a coffee cup. Sarah glanced around, but none of the other customers were paying attention. Slowly, she picked up the money, $100 in total, wrapped in a note written in elegant handwriting. "Thank you for your help. Forget what you saw." The paper felt like it was burning her fingers. She should turn it in, report it to someone. But who? The police? The FBI? And what would happen to Emma if she got caught up in an investigation? Before she could decide, she noticed something else. The newspaper left on the table was folded to show a specific article. "Local family killed in home invasion. Police suspect professional hit." The story was from 3 years ago, the same month Mike had died. Sarah's world tilted sideways. It couldn't be connected. It had to be a coincidence. But as she stared at the old article, memories surfaced. Things Mike had said in the weeks before his death. Phone calls that made him nervous. Documents he'd started keeping in a locked drawer. At work. "Everything okay, Sarah?" Carol called from her usual spot at the counter. "You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, she had. Sarah quickly stuffed the money and newspaper into her apron pocket, pasting on her customer service smile. "Just fine. Can I get you a refill?" But nothing was fine. The crash, the wanted woman, the money, the article about Mike, it was all connected somehow. She just couldn't see the pattern yet. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that maybe she didn't want to. The rest of her shift past in a blur of coffee refills and forced smiles. Every customer became a potential threat, every casual glance a possible surveillance. By the time she clocked out, her nerves were frayed to breaking point. In the parking lot, she sat in her car for a long moment, staring at the money and newspaper. The article about Mike's accident seemed to mock her with its carefully crafted lies. 3 years of accepting the official story, of telling Emma that sometimes bad things just happen, of trying to move on. Had it all been built on a foundation of deception? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about Mike and about what really happened that night. They're watching you now. Be careful who you trust." Sarah's hands shook as she started the car. She needed to pick up Emma, needed to act normal, needed to figure out what to do next. But one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. The simple act of saving someone's life had just uncovered a truth that others had died to keep buried. The post office was nearly empty when Sarah walked in during her lunch break. Her heart pounded as she approached the wall of wanted posters, trying to appear casual while searching for Catherine Pierce's face. The poster was still there, but now she noticed details she'd missed before in her initial shock. Wanted in connection with financial fraud exceeding $50 million. Former CFO of Meridian Healthcare Solutions. Known aliases include Catherine Preston and Karen Phillips. Sarah's breath caught. Meridian Healthcare Solutions. The same company that had owned the hospital where Mike worked. The one that had closed suddenly just weeks after his death. She'd always assumed it was just another corporate bankruptcy, another headline in a string of bad news that year. But now, a man in a dark suit entered the post office, and Sarah quickly pretended to be checking her empty P.O. box. Her mind raced with half-formed connections. Mike had been acting strange in those final weeks, staying late at work, taking calls in whispered tones. He'd mentioned something about incorrect billing practices, about numbers that didn't add up. "Sometimes I think I'm in too deep," he'd said one night, so quietly she'd almost missed it. When she'd asked what he meant, he'd just kissed her forehead and changed the subject. The man in the suit was still there, methodically checking his own box. Was he really just a customer? Or was he one of the people the text had warned her about? Sarah forced herself to walk calmly to her car, even as her instinct screamed at her to run. Back in her car, she pulled out her phone and searched for news about Meridian Healthcare. Most articles were typical corporate jargon about restructuring and market forces, but one headline from a local business journal caught her eye: Meridian Healthcare collapse linked to massive fraud investigation. The article was behind a paywall, but the preview was enough to make her stomach clench. Whistleblower allegations, systematic Medicare fraud, key witnesses unavailable for comment. Sarah's hands trembled as she started her car. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture she didn't want to see. Mike hadn't just died in an accident. He'd been silenced. A tap on her window nearly made her scream. It was just Carol from the diner, looking concerned. "Sarah? Are you all right, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Sarah managed, rolling down her window slightly. Just checking my mail." Carol's weathered face creased with worry. "You know, I've been meaning to tell you something. About the night of Mike's accident." Sarah's heart stopped. "What about it?" "I was working late at the school that night, grading papers. I saw someone." Carol glanced around the parking lot nervously. "Maybe we should talk somewhere else." Before Sarah could respond, a black SUV pulled into the spot next to them. The man in the suit from the post office emerged, speaking quietly into a phone. Carol's face went pale. "Never mind," she said quickly. "It's probably nothing. Take care of yourself, Sarah." Sarah watched Carol hurry away, her sensible shoes clicking rapidly on the pavement. The man in the suit never looked directly at them, but Sarah could feel his attention like a physical weight. She drove back to the diner on autopilot, her mind spinning with questions. What had Carol seen? Why was she scared? And most importantly, what was Sarah going to do about any of it? The diner's parking lot was unusually empty for the lunch rush. Sarah checked her phone. No new messages from the unknown number, but there was a missed call from Emma's school. Her heart jumped until she saw the voicemail was just about an upcoming parent-teacher conference. Emma. Everything came back to protecting Emma. If Sarah was right, if Mike had been killed because he discovered something at Meridian, then she was potentially putting their daughter in danger by digging into it. But if she did nothing, if she ignored the connection between Catherine Pierce and Mike's death, would she be betraying his memory, failing to get justice for Emma's father? The FBI poster's warning flashed in her mind. Armed and dangerous. Yet Catherine Pierce had seemed anything but dangerous in that burning car. Desperate, yes. Frightened, definitely. But her eyes had held something else. Recognition, maybe? As if she'd known exactly who Sarah was. Even then, Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Mike kept records. Storage Unit 23, Riverside Facility. Code is Emma's birthday. Get them before they do. And Sarah? Trust no one. She stared at the message until the screen went dark. 3 years of questions about Mike's death, of trying to move on, of building a new life for Emma. All of it changed by one chance encounter on a dark highway. The smart thing would be to delete the message. Go back to work. Keep her head down. And her daughter safe. But Sarah knew she was long past the point of smart decisions. She'd passed that point the moment she'd crawled into that burning car. Besides, Mike had always said she was too stubborn for her own good. It was time to prove him right. The package was waiting on Sarah's doorstep when she got home, a plain brown box with no return address. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, was a cheap burner phone and a handwritten note. "Keep this with you." There. Closer than you think. Sarah's hands shook as she examined the phone. It was an old model, the kind you could buy with cash at any convenience store. No GPS, no smartphone features, just basic call and text capability. The kind of phone you'd use if you didn't want to be traced. Emma would be at soccer practice for another hour, giving Sarah time to think. She paced their small apartment, the burner phone heavy in her pocket. The smart move would be to throw it away, to pretend none of this was happening. But the memory of Mike's last weeks kept intruding. His distraction, his worry, the late night, the phone calls he'd take outside. The burner phone buzzed, making her jump. Her text message appeared. "Check your computer. Email from 3 years ago, April 15th. Mike's last message." Sarah's throat went dry. She hadn't touched Mike's old emails since his death, couldn't bear to see his words, his daily messages about picking up milk or checking Emma's homework. But now, her laptop hummed to life, the screen casting a blue glow in the darkening apartment. Mike's email was still saved in her favorites. The password unchanged. "Emma loves butterflies, too." The inbox loaded slowly, years of memories flickering past as she scrolled to April 15th. There it was, time-stamped 9:47 p.m., just hours before the accident. The subject line read, "Insurance policy." "Sarah, if you're reading this, something's happened. I found something. At work, something big. The numbers don't add up. Millions missing. Patients billed for treatments they never received. He says there's more, something worse behind it all. I'm meeting her tonight to get proof. I've made copies of everything. Storage Unit 23, like we talked about. If anything happens to me, don't go to the police. They're involved. Find Kay. She'll know what to do. I love you and Emma more than anything. I'm doing this for you, for everyone they've hurt. Please forgive me." Sarah read the email 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. Kay Catherine Pierce. Mike had known her, had been working with her. And now, 3 years later, Sarah had pulled the same woman from a burning car. A sound outside made her freeze. Footsteps on the apartment walkway, too heavy to be Emma's. Sarah quickly closed the laptop and moved to the window, carefully peering through the blinds. 2 men in dark suits stood by a black SUV in the parking lot, identical to the one from the post office. As she watched, one spoke into a radio while the other studied a photo in his hand. Even from this distance, Sarah could make out her own face in the image. The burner phone buzzed again. "Don't let them see you. Back door. Now." Sarah's heart pounded as she grabbed her purse and Mike's old backpack, the one she'd never had the heart to throw away. The back door opened onto a small patio and the apartment complex's communal garden. She could circle around through the neighbor's yard, get to her car without being seen. Just as she reached for the door handle, her regular phone rang. Emma's ringtone. "Mom?" Her daughter's voice was tight with worry. "Practice ended early. Coach didn't show up. Can you come get me?" Sarah's blood ran cold. Emma's coach had never missed a practice in 2 years. "Where are you right now?" "Still at school. Some men in suits were asking about you. They said they're from the insurance company, about Dad's policy." The burner phone buzzed. "They're using Emma to draw you out. Don't go to the school. Send someone you trust." Sarah's mind raced. Mrs. Rodriguez next door. She could call her, ask her to pick up Emma. But what if the men were watching the neighbors too? How deep did this go? "Emma, listen to me carefully," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice calm. "Go back inside the school. Find Mrs. Peterson, your math teacher. Tell her." She hesitated, then remembered a conversation from years ago, a contingency plan she and Mike had created, but never thought they'd need. "Tell her it's a code butterfly day." "Mom, you're scaring me. Everything's going to be fine, baby. Mrs. Peterson will know what to do. I love you." Sarah ended the call, her hands trembling. Code butterfly, their emergency protocol. Mike had insisted on setting it up with Emma's favorite teacher, just in case. "Sometimes good people have to go into witness protection," he'd explained when Sarah questioned it. Better to be prepared. Now she understood. He'd known this might happen, had been trying to protect them even then. The burner phone buzzed one final time. "Car in the back lot. Silver Honda. Keys under the mat. Get what you need from storage. Then get your daughter. You have 1 hour before they figure it out." Sarah looked around their small apartment, at the life she and Emma had rebuilt after Mike's death. the school photos on the fridge, Emma's soccer trophies, the chair where she read bedtime stories when Emma was small. Then she opened the back door and stepped into the gathering darkness, leaving everything behind except what mattered most, the chance to keep her daughter safe and uncover the truth. About her husband's death, Sarah found the silver Honda exactly where the message said it would be, an unremarkable car that would blend in with any parking lot. Her hand trembled as she reached under the floor mat, fingers closing around the cold metal of the key. The photo in her wallet seemed to burn against her leg. Emma's most recent school picture, her smile bright and untroubled. Everything Sarah did from this point forward would be about keeping that smile safe. The car started smoothly, revealing a full tank of gas and a manila envelope on the passenger seat. Inside, she found $5,000 in cash, a prepaid credit card, and another note, insurance policy payout. Emma arranged it before. There's more when you need it. Her throat tightened. Even now, 3 years later, Mike was still trying to protect them. She checked her regular phone. No messages from Mrs. Peterson yet, which was good. The code butterfly. Protocol meant radio silence until Emma was secure at the safe house. The storage facility was on the outskirts of town, a maze of identical metal buildings under harsh fluorescent lights. Unit 23 was in the back corner, partially hidden by an overgrown hedge. Sarah's fingers shook as she punched in Emma's birthday, 0810. The padlock clicked open. The unit was smaller than she expected, barely bigger than a walk-in closet. Most of the space was taken up by furniture they'd never gotten around to selling after downsizing. Emma's old twin bed, Mike's leather armchair, boxes labeled winter clothes, and Christmas. But Sarah's eye was drawn to a metal filing cabinet. In the corner, one she'd never seen before. The top drawer held what looked like patient records, hundreds of them. The second drawer was filled with financial documents, spreadsheets showing millions of dollars moving between accounts with names like Meridian Auxiliary Services and Healthcare Holdings International. But it was the bottom drawer that made her breath catch. Photographs, dozens of them, showing men in expensive suits meeting in parking garages, exchanging briefcases. Hotel surveillance footage screenshots, bank statements with highlighted transactions, and in several of the photos, a younger Catherine. Pierce, looking polished and professional in her role as Meridian's CFO. He built a whole case, Sarah whispered to herself, right under their noses. The burner phone buzzed. Did you find it? Sarah hesitated, then typed back, yes. Who are you? A friend. Someone who worked with M. Get everything out. Now. As if on cue, Sarah heard car tires on gravel. Headlights swept across the storage unit's roll-up door. Her pulse spiked as she grabbed the files and photos, shoving them into Mike's old backpack. The rest would have to stay. There wasn't time. She was closing the filing cabinet when she noticed something taped to the inside of the bottom drawer. A small flash drive with a butterfly sticker. Emma had put that sticker there, Sarah realized. Mike had brought her to this unit, had let their daughter decorate what might be the most dangerous piece of evidence in his investigation. The car outside was closer now, its engine idling. Sarah grabbed the flash drive and eased the storage unit door closed, praying the mechanism wouldn't squeak. Through the gap, she could see black shoes moving on the gravel. Her phone lit up, her regular phone, not the burner. A text from Mrs. Peterson. Secure. The emoji meant Emma was safe, already on her way to the designated safe house. Sarah allowed herself one shaky breath of relief. The footsteps were closer. Sarah pressed herself against the metal wall, barely breathing. The beam of a flashlight swept under the door, paused. Her burner phone vibrated silently in her pocket. The message read, back corner, hole in fence, blue pickup on other side, keys in ignition, leave this phone, go. Sarah looked down at Mike's backpack, heavy with evidence that had cost him his life, at her wallet with Emma's photo, at her wedding ring, the only piece of jewelry she'd never pawned, no matter how desperate things got. The flashlight beam disappeared. A voice spoke quietly. "Unit 23, check the lock." Sarah ran. She moved as quietly as she could, keeping to the shadows between units. The hole in the fence was small, partially hidden by garbage bins. She pushed the backpack through first, then squeezed after it, ignoring the bite of rusty wire against her arms. The blue pickup was there, an old model with mud-spattered plates. Sarah slid behind the wheel, her trembling hands finding the keys. As she pulled away, she caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror. Men in dark suits rushing through the storage facility gate, their faces illuminated by harsh security lights. She drove until the storage facility disappeared behind her, until her heart stopped racing, until the reality of what she'd just done began to sink in. In less than 2 hours, she'd abandoned her home, sent her daughter into hiding, and stolen evidence that powerful people had killed to keep secret. The photo in her wallet seemed heavier now, weighted with promise and threat. Emma's smile so like Mike's. Sarah touched her wedding ring, twisting it once for luck, an old habit she'd never broken. "I'll make this right," she whispered to the empty car. For both of them. Her regular phone, the last connection to her old life, lit up with a final message. "Unknown number. Don't trust the FBI. Don't trust the police. And whatever you do, don't trust Catherine Pierce. She's not what you think." Sarah pulled into a gas station, dropped her phone in the trash, and pointed the pickup toward the highway. Somewhere ahead was her daughter, the truth about her husband's death, and answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask yet. Behind her, sirens began to wail. The motel sat just off the interstate, its neon vacancy sign flickering weakly in the pre-dawn darkness. Sarah had driven through the night, taking back roads when possible, jumping at every set of headlights in her rearview mirror. Now, in a room that smelled of cheap cleaner and cigarettes, she finally had a chance to examine the USB drive that had cost Mike his life. Her hands shook as she plugged it into the burner laptop she'd bought with cash at a 24-hour Walmart. The butterfly sticker caught the dim light, Emma's childish attempt at decoration, now a poignant reminder of everything at stake. The drive contained dozens of folders, meticulously organized in Mike's characteristic style: patient records, financial, statements, internal emails. But one folder stood out: insurance. It was the same word he'd used in his final email to her. Inside were surveillance photos, some taken by Mike himself, others apparently provided by someone else. Board meetings at Meridian Healthcare, late-night exchanges in parking garages, spreadsheets showing millions flowing through shell companies. And running through it all, one name kept appearing: Project Lighthouse. A video file caught her attention: KP Meeting Final.mp4. Sarah's breath caught as Catherine Pierce's face filled the screen, 3 years younger but unmistakable. She was sitting in what looked like a cafe, speaking quietly to someone off camera. "Can't keep this hidden much longer," Catherine was saying. "The testing protocols were falsified. Those patients never stood a chance." Mike's voice responded. From behind the camera, "How many? Hundreds, maybe thousands. They're using Lighthouse facilities to—" Catherine looked around nervously. "Someone's watching. We need to—" The video cut off abruptly. Sarah sat back, her mind racing. This wasn't just about financial fraud. They'd been testing something on patients, something deadly enough to warrant murder to keep it quiet. Her new burner phone buzzed. Time to move. They tracked the laptop purchase. Sarah quickly copied the USB contents to an encrypted drive she'd bought separately, then dropped the original drive into a glass of water. She was learning to think like a fugitive, and that scared her almost as much as the people chasing her. As she packed the few supplies she'd bought, her eyes fell on the local newspaper she'd grabbed at the gas station. The headline made her stomach lurch. Local waitress sought for questioning an FBI investigation. Her own face stared back at her from the grainy photo taken from her employee ID at the diner. The article was brief but pointed. She was wanted for questioning about possible connections to criminal activities. No mention of Catherine Pierce or the crash. But the message was clear. They were trying to flush her out. A knock at the door made her freeze. "Housekeeping," a woman's voice called. "Not now," Sarah called back, shoving the laptop and files into her backpack. "Ms. Martinez?" The voice was different now, authoritative. "FBI, we just want to talk." Sarah's heart pounded as she looked around the room. No back door, window too small. She was trapped. The burner phone lit up. "Bathroom ceiling, now!" She rushed to the bathroom, looking up. There it was, a maintenance access panel, nearly invisible unless you knew to look for it. The phone buzzed. Again, "Adjacent room empty, go." The door handle jiggled. "Miss Martinez, please open the door." Sarah climbed onto the toilet tank, pushing at the panel. It lifted easily, revealing dusty wiring and a space just big enough to crawl through. As she pulled herself up, she heard the main door opening. They must have gotten a key from management. The ceiling crawl space was pitch black and thick with dust. Sarah moved carefully, trying not to make noise as voices filled the room below. "Clear!" a male voice called. "Bathroom clear too, but the laptop's still warm. She was just here. Check the surveillance footage. Put units on all exits." She couldn't have gotten far. Sarah kept crawling, following the vague light ahead that suggested another access panel. Her phone lit up one final time. 3 panels forward, drop down, red Civic in backlot, go east. She found the panel, easing it open to peer into an empty room. The drop was higher than she expected, but she managed to land quietly. Years of playground supervision with Emma finally paying off. As she slipped out the back door, an evidence bag caught her eye through the housekeeping cart's window. Inside was a familiar piece of paper, the note from the silver Honda, the one mentioning Mike. They weren't just FBI agents. They were searching for the same evidence she had. Sarah ran for the red Civic, her mind spinning with new questions. Who was helping her? Why had Catherine Pierce been investigating her own company? And most importantly, what was Project Lighthouse, and how many people had died to keep it secret? The answers were in Mike's files somewhere. She just had to stay alive long enough to find them. The diner looked like every other truck stop along. I-40 cracked vinyl booths, coffee-stained menus, and a flickering "open 24 hours" sign that had seen better days. Sarah sat in the back corner, her third cup of coffee growing cold as she studied the coded message that had arrived an hour ago. "Where good men go to rest. Row 7, Stone 23, midnight. Come alone." It hadn't taken long to decode. Mike was buried in Riverside Cemetery, Row 7, Plot 23. Someone was using her husband's grave for a meeting point, someone who knew their history intimately. The waitress approached, pot in hand. "More coffee, hun?" Sarah shook her head, watching the parking lot through grimy windows. In the past 48 hours, she'd learned to spot unmarked police cars and federal agents. So far, this place seemed clean. Her burner phone buzzed. "Time to go. Don't use the front door." Sarah left cash on the table and headed for the restroom. Instead of going in, she slipped through the kitchen, ignoring the startled cook. The back alley was empty except for dumpsters and steam rising from vents. The cemetery was a 10-minute drive, but Sarah took 30, doubling back and switching. Cars twice. Techniques she'd learned from the mysterious texts that kept arriving. Each vehicle was exactly where promised. Keys waiting, no questions asked. Riverside Cemetery was dark except for scattered security lights. Sarah parked the latest car, a beaten-up Corolla, at the far end and walked, staying in the shadows. Her father's military training, drilled into her as a child, finally seemed useful. Move quietly, stay low, watch your surroundings. Mike's headstone looked different in the darkness. Sarah knelt, touching the cold granite. "I'm sorry I haven't visited lately," she whispered. "Been a little busy." He'd understand. Sarah spun around. A figure emerged from behind a nearby mausoleum. Female, medium height, wearing a hooded jacket. Even before she lowered the hood, Sarah recognized those eyes from the burning car. Catherine Pierce. "That's not my real name." The woman stayed just out of clear view. But then, None of them are anymore. Why here? Why Mike's grave? Because he trusted you. And because this is the only place they won't have under surveillance. They think it's too obvious. Sarah's hand tightened around the pepper spray in her pocket. The files on the USB drive. Project Lighthouse. What was it really about? Experimental treatments, unauthorized drug trials. Meridian was using terminal patients as test subjects, falsifying results to get FDA approval. Catherine's voice was tight with controlled anger. When the side effects started showing up in other patients, they buried the evidence, along with anyone who discovered it. Like Mike, he was getting too close, found a pattern in the billing codes, treatments. That couldn't have happened because the patients were already dead. Catherine moved closer, her face catching the moonlight. She looked older than her photos, worn by years of running. I tried to help him get the evidence out. I was too late. Why should I believe you? Because I'm not the only former Meridian executive in hiding. 3 board members who opposed Project Lighthouse died in accidents. 2 whistleblowers disappeared. I've spent 3 years building a case, but they have people everywhere. FBI, local police, media. The crash, Sarah said slowly. It wasn't an accident, was it? They found me in Phoenix. I barely got away. You weren't supposed to be there, Sarah. You weren't supposed to get involved. Catherine glanced around nervously. But maybe it's better this way. Mike always said you were smarter than anyone knew. A twig snapped in the darkness. Both women tensed. We're out of time, Catherine said quickly. There's a copy of everything I've gathered in a safety deposit box. First National Bank, downtown branch, box 235. She pressed a key into Sarah's hand. The password is Emma's middle name. How do you... Mike told me. He talked about you both all the time. Said if anything happened to him... Catherine's voice. Caught. He made me promise to watch over you. I've been trying from a distance, but now they know you're connected. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Flashlight beams swept the nearby trees. Go, Catherine urged. Take the service road behind the mausoleum. There's a motorcycle under a tarp. The evidence in that box. It's everything we need to bring them down. To get justice for Mike and all the others. Sarah clutched the key. What about you? I'll draw them off. And Sarah. Catherine's eyes, the same ones that had haunted Sarah since the crash, were intense. Trust the journalist, the one who covered Mike's death. She knows more than she printed, but be careful. Trust your instincts about who's really trying to help you. Before Sarah could respond, Catherine melted into the darkness. Moments later, shouts erupted from the other side of the cemetery. Sarah ran, Catherine's words echoing in her mind. The journalist, Lisa Chen from the local paper. The one who'd written Mike's obituary, who'd kept calling with questions until Sarah stopped answering. Maybe it was time to start answering again. The downtown branch of First National Bank loomed ahead, its security cameras tracking every angle of the street. Sarah watched from a coffee shop across the road, her third cup growing cold as she studied the bank's security footage on her laptop. The feed had been surprisingly easy to access with the instructions left on her new burner phone. Another skill she never thought she'd need to learn. Something wasn't right. The same security guard had circled the lobby 4 times in the past hour. 2 men in suits hadn't moved from their seats near the safety deposit box area, and a cleaning crew was working in the middle of the business. A day. More coffee, ma'am? Sarah startled, then forced a smile at the waiter. No, thank... The words died in her throat. On his wrist, barely visible under his sleeve, was a familiar tattoo. The same one she'd seen on one of the men in Mike's. Surveillance photos. She stood casually, gathering her things. Actually, I need to use the restroom. The waiter's eyes hardened almost imperceptibly. His hand moved toward his jacket. Sarah didn't wait. She knocked her coffee cup into his lap and ran, shouldering through the emergency exit as shouts erupted. Behind her, the alarm blared, but she was already halfway down the alley, her heart pounding in sync with her footsteps. Left at the corner, her phone buzzed. Silver sedan, now! She dove into the car just as two men burst from the coffee shop. Through the rearview mirror, she saw the waiter speaking into a radio, his jacket open enough to reveal a shoulder holster. Her phone lit up with a series of texts. "Bank is compromised. They knew you were coming. Someone leaked the information. Don't trust Kay." Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Catherine had given her the bank information. If she couldn't trust Catherine, a new message appeared. "Check the traffic camera footage from your apartment complex. Night of the crash. Look for Unit 47. Unit 47. Carol's apartment." The neighbor who'd tried to tell her something about Mike's death. Sarah pulled into a public library parking lot, her mind racing. She still had access to the apartment complex's security system through Mike's old passwords. He'd installed the cameras himself as part of his side job in security consulting. Another piece of his life that seemed more significant now. The footage took forever to load on the library's public Wi-Fi. Sarah kept glancing over her shoulder, watching for men in suits or waiters with hidden holsters. Finally, the video player opened. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., the night of Mike's death. A dark SUV pulled into the visitor's spot. Two men emerged, heading toward Carol's unit. 20 minutes later, they left. Carol watched from her window, clearly distraught. The next day, she told Sarah how sorry she was about Mike's accident, hours before the police had even notified Sarah of his death. "She knew," Sarah whispered. "She saw something that night." Her phone buzzed again. "Now you're asking the right questions." Sarah stared at the message. Who was helping her? Catherine? Someone else? And why did they want her to discover the truth about Carol? The library's front door opened. A man in a suit walked in, scanning the computer area with too much interest to be a casual visitor. Sarah quietly packed up, keeping her head down. The emergency exit was just past the reference section, 3 steps away. "2. Excuse me, ma'am?" A woman's voice, professional but firm. "Could you come with us?" Sarah turned. A badge flashed. FBI. The woman agent's face was sympathetic but determined. Behind her, 2 more agents moved to block the exits. "We just want to talk about Catherine Pierce," the agent said, "and about what really happened the night your husband died." Sarah's phone vibrated one last time. "Don't. They're not FBI." She had a split second to decide who to trust. The badge in front of her, or the anonymous messages that had kept her alive so far. The agent took a step forward, hand extended. "Please, Mrs. Martinez, for Emma's sake." They knew her daughter's name. They knew exactly which button to push. Sarah's response was instinctive. She grabbed the nearest shelf and pulled. Thousands of books crashed down, creating a barrier between her and the fake agents. Their shouts followed her through the emergency exit and into the parking lot. Her phone guided her to another waiting car. As she sped away, Sarah realized something that chilled her more than the fake agents or the compromised bank. Whoever was helping her had known the library's layout, had known exactly which shelf would cause the most chaos when toppled. They hadn't just been watching her, they'd been planning for this. But why? The ATM screen blinked red. "Access denied." Sarah tried again, her hands shaking as she inserted her card. The same message appeared, followed by something worse. "Card retained. Please contact your financial institution." She backed away from the machine, fighting panic. That account had been her emergency fund, carefully hidden under her maiden name. No one should have known about it. Not the FBI, not Meridian, not even Catherine. Her phone buzzed. Not the burner phone this time, but a text message displayed on the ATM screen itself. "Checking $0. Savings $0. Transfers past 24 hours. 250,000. Sarah's blood ran cold. $250,000 transferred from her account. Money she'd never had, moved to places she'd never heard of. "They're setting you up." Her burner phone lit up. "Check the news." The local news website loaded on her phone, dominated by a breaking story. Former hospital employee linked to $1 million fraud scheme. Her employee photo from the hospital where she'd once worked as an administrative assistant back when Mike was alive, stared back at her. The article painted a damning picture, a grieving widow discovered to be part of a larger conspiracy. Unauthorized access to patient records, suspicious financial transactions, anonymous sources suggesting she'd helped cover up medical fraud for years. "It's all lies," she whispered, but the evidence seemed solid. Bank statements, employee records, even emails she'd supposedly written, discussing Project Lighthouse in detail. Her burner phone buzzed again. "They're thorough, been planning this since the crash. You were their backup plan." Backup plan for what? Insurance. If Kay ever talked, they'd have someone else to blame. The grieving widow, desperate for money. Corrupt all along. Perfect story. Sarah's mind raced. The fake FBI agents at the library had been preparing to arrest her. The bank stakeout wasn't to stop her from getting evidence. It was to catch her accessing a suspicious account. Every move she'd made since the crash had played into their hands. A new message. Channel 5 News. Now. Sarah ducked into a bar, nodding at the bartender's gesture toward the TVs mounted above. The breaking news banner hit her like a physical blow. Local reporter found dead in apparent suicide. Lisa Chen's photo filled the screen. The journalist Catherine had told her to trust, the one who'd kept digging into Mike's death. Police found evidence of depression, the anchor was saying, including notes suggesting professional setbacks and personal struggles. "They're cleaning up loose ends," the burner phone buzzed. "Carol's gone too. Relocated for work this morning." Sarah gripped the bar to stay upright. 2 potential witnesses gone in one day. How long until they came? For her, for Emma. Her personal phone, which she'd kept only for emergencies, lit up with messages from old co-workers and friends. "Sarah, how could you? The FBI was here asking questions. They showed us the evidence. All those patients. 3 years of rebuilding. Her life, of maintaining friendships and trust, destroyed in hours by a carefully crafted lie." The bartender was watching her too closely now, glancing between her face and the news report. Sarah dropped cash on the bar and walked out, forcing herself not to run. In the street, every face seemed hostile. Every security camera felt like an accusation. Her phone buzzed one last time. "Storage unit compromised. Evidence planted. Don't go back." She leaned against a wall, fighting dizziness. They'd thought of everything, every escape route, every potential ally, every piece of evidence, all turned against her. The only thing they hadn't managed to touch was... Sarah straightened. Mike's files, the ones she'd copied from the USB drive before destroying it, the ones showing the real money trail, the real victims of Project Lighthouse. "Where would you hide something important?" Mike had asked Emma once, teaching her a game. "Somewhere obvious, somewhere everyone looks but nobody sees." Sarah pulled out her phone and downloaded a popular cloud storage app. 10 minutes later, Mike's files were uploaded to a free account under a username no one would look twice at. Butterfly Girl 10, Emma's old gaming handle. Sometimes the best hiding place was in plain sight. Her burner phone lit up one final time. Smart, now for the hard part. Time to disappear completely, but first, warning, they're watching someone else too. Someone you haven't thought about in years. Attached was a grainy photo that made Sarah's heart stop. Her father, the retired Marine, who'd taught her about survival and gone off-grid years ago, sitting in a diner. The timestamp was from yesterday. They'd found the one person who could teach her how to truly vanish, which meant she had to find him first. The fake ID felt strange in Sarah's hands, the lamination still warm from the printer. The woman in the photo looked like her, but different. Darker hair, glasses she didn't need, a name she'd never heard before, Rachel Cooper. It was good work, professional enough to pass anything except a federal database search. "Your new life," said the man who called himself Marcus. His apartment above the laundromat smelled of chemicals and desperation, filled with the tools of his trade, printers, laminators, specialized paper stock. Backstopped with utility bills, rental history, even a credit report. Good enough to get you across state lines. Sarah examined the other documents. Driver's license, credit cards, social security card. A complete identity created from scratch. The kind of package that cost more than she'd made in 3 months at the diner. The payment cleared, Marcus said, answering her unspoken question. Your father's still got friends in interesting places. Sarah's head snapped up. You know my father? Marines look after their own. Marcus gestured to a faded tattoo on his forearm. Force Recon, the same unit her father had served in. He said you'd come. Said to give you something else, too. He pulled out an old flip phone, the kind that couldn't be easily tracked. Coordinates are programmed in. He'll meet you there in 2 days. After that, you're on your own. Sarah pocketed the phone, her mind racing. Her father had known she'd need help, had prepared for it. How long had he been watching, waiting for the conspiracy to finally reach her? One more thing, Marcus said, handing her a USB drive. Your dad said you'd need proof of what really happened at Meridian. Well, someone uploaded a lot of interesting documents to a cloud account yesterday. Documents that people are very eager to delete. Sarah's breath caught. Her Butterfly account. They'd found it already. Don't worry, Marcus smiled. I grabbed everything before it disappeared. Added some things your father's been collecting too. Turns out he never really believed Mike's death was an accident. A pounding on the door made them both freeze. Police! Open up! Marcus moved quickly, pulling up a floor panel. Maintenance tunnel takes you to the back alley. Don't stop, don't look back. What about you? I've got a different exit, and enough thermite to destroy everything here in 3 minutes. He pressed one last item into her hands, a key with a butterfly keychain. Storage locker at the bus station. Your father left you supplies. Now go! Sarah slipped into the tunnel as footsteps thundered above. The space was tight, forcing her to crawl through decades of dust and cobwebs. Behind her, she heard Marcus greeting the police, his voice casual and unhurried. The tunnel ended behind a dumpster. Sarah emerged into the rain, pulling her new jacket tight around her. The ID in her pocket felt like it was burning. Her first real step into a shadow world she'd never meant to enter. Her new phone buzzed with coordinates, a location in the mountains, remote and hard to reach, the kind of place only someone with her father's training would choose for a meeting. Explosion rocked the block behind her. The laundromat's windows glowed orange for a moment. Marcus had kept his word. All evidence of her transformation was gone. Sarah walked quickly, not running, just another woman hurrying through the rain. Her reflection in shop windows showed a stranger, Rachel Cooper, with her sensible glasses and dyed hair, a woman with no connection to grieving widows or corporate conspiracies. The bus station locker held everything she'd need: cash, clothes, burner phones, and a handwritten note in her father's familiar scrawl. Follow the training, trust your instincts, and remember, butterflies aren't just pretty things, they're survivors. Sarah smiled despite herself. The butterfly references weren't just about Emma anymore. They were a message. Like butterflies, she would have to transform completely to survive. She bought a ticket heading west, paying cash. In the bathroom, she changed clothes and styled her hair differently. Rachel Cooper walked out confidently. Just another traveler, heading home. But in her pocket, the USB drive held enough truth to bring down an empire. And somewhere in the mountains, a former Marine was preparing to teach his daughter the one thing she'd never learned from him: how to wage war from the shadows. The bus pulled away as sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah watched the city disappear. Behind her, thinking of Emma, safe in her own secret location. Of Mike, whose death had set all this in motion. Of Catherine Pierce, who might be ally or enemy. The old Sarah Martinez was gone, erased as thoroughly as her bank accounts and social media presence. In her place sat Rachel Cooper, a woman with new skills, new purpose, and nothing left to lose. Her father's note had contained one more line, a quote she remembered from childhood lessons. The most dangerous warrior isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one everyone underestimated. They had underestimated her. That would be their last mistake. The corporate documents spread across the cabin's wooden table told a story more horrifying than Sarah had imagined. Her father sat across from her, his weathered face illuminated by lamplight as they pieced together the truth about Project Lighthouse. It wasn't just medical fraud, John Martinez said, pointing to a spreadsheet. Meridian was running unauthorized drug trials in hospice facilities. Terminal patients, no families, no one to ask questions, perfect test subjects. Sarah studied the numbers, her stomach churning. These death rates, they're too high because they weren't trying to cure anyone. He pulled out another document, this one marked with Meridian's executive letterhead. They were weaponizing treatments, developing ways to make diseases more aggressive, more resistant to standard medications, then selling the research to who? Private military contractors, foreign governments, anyone willing to pay. He tapped a series of offshore transactions. Mike found the money trail first. But Catherine Pierce discovered the testing sites. The name made Sarah sit up straighter. You know about Catherine? I know she was their CFO. Know she helped set up the shadow accounts before she realized what they were really funding. He paused, studying his daughter's face. And I know she's the reason Mike died. Sarah's heart stopped. What? She got sloppy. Let them trace her communications with Mike. The night he died, he wasn't just gathering evidence. He was trying to get her out before they killed her too. The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. That's why she was working with him, why she felt responsible, why she's been protecting you and Emma ever since, John confirmed. Her way of trying to make it right. Sarah stood, moving to the cabin's window. Outside, the mountains were dark, masses against a star-filled sky. Somewhere out there, Emma was safe in a location even Sarah didn't know. Another of Catherine's attempts at redemption. There's more, John said quietly. He pulled out a final document, this one newer than the others. Project Lighthouse didn't end with Mike's death, they just moved it. New facilities, new names. But the same research. The paper showed recent satellite photos of what looked like medical facilities, tucked away in remote locations. Next to them were death certificates, dozens of them, all with the same mysterious causes of death. They're still doing it, Sarah whispered, still killing people and making billions doing it. John's voice was grim, but they made one mistake. They got confident, started keeping records of everything, proof of their contracts, their buyers, their research. Where? Secured servers in their new headquarters, biometric access only, limited to top executives. He smiled slightly. Including their CFO. Sarah's mind raced. Catherine, she still has access? Her codes were never revoked. They needed to maintain the illusion that she'd just disappeared, not turned against them. Otherwise, their buyers might start asking questions about the security of their investments. A plan began forming in Sarah's mind. So if someone could get Catherine into that building, they could download everything, enough evidence to expose not just Meridian, but everyone they've been selling to. John watched his daughter carefully. It would be suicide, not if we had help. Sarah pulled out her burner phone, the one that had been receiving mysterious messages. Someone's been guiding me, keeping me alive. Someone who knows the inside of Meridian as well as Catherine. Another whistleblower? Maybe. Sarah thought of the perfectly timed escapes, the inside knowledge of security systems. Someone who knows how to work in the shadows. Like you taught me. John was silent for a long moment. Finally he stood, moving to a locked cabinet in the corner. From it he withdrew a laptop unlike any Sarah had seen before, military-grade, heavily modified. If you're going to do this, he said, you'll need to understand their security systems, their protocols. He opened the laptop, revealing lines of code. Everything I've learned watching them these past 3 years. Sarah sat down at the computer, her father's training from childhood flooding back. Hours spent learning about security systems, computer networks, surveillance patterns. He'd always said he was preparing her for anything. Now she knew why. One more thing, John said. He pulled out an old photo, Mike in his paramedic uniform, standing next to a younger Catherine Pierce. In the background was a sign, Meridian Healthcare Solutions, where light shows the way. Their motto, Sarah said softly, the source of the project name. Mike took this the day he decided to act, said sometimes the biggest lies hide in plain sight, behind pretty words and noble claims. John's eyes met his daughter's. You sure you want to do this? Once we start. Sarah looked at the photo, at Mike's determined face, at the satellite images of secret facilities where people were still dying, at the evidence of corruption that had cost her husband his life. They took Mike from us, she said. They're still hurting people, and they tried to destroy my life to cover it up. She turned to the laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Time to show them what happens when you underestimate a desperate mother. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. A storm was coming. Sarah Martinez, now Rachel Cooper, began to type, preparing for a war that would either expose the truth or destroy the last remnants of her old life. She was ready for either. Outcome. The video evidence was damning. Sarah watched it for the third time on her father's secure laptop, making sure she hadn't missed anything. On screen, a younger Catherine Pierce sat in a Meridian boardroom, secretly recording a meeting that would later help drive her into hiding. Project Lighthouse isn't just about profit margins anymore, a man was saying. David Chen, Meridian's CEO. Our buyers want proof of concept, real-world applications. You mean weapons? Catherine's voice, tense but controlled. Using terminal patients to develop biological weapons. We prefer to call them strategic medical deterrents. Chen's smile was cold. The hospice facilities provide perfect testing conditions. No family, no oversight, just clean data. Sarah paused the video, fighting nausea. Her father had retrieved this footage from one of Catherine's dead drops, locations where she'd hidden evidence before going on the run. There were dozens more videos like this one, each more incriminating than the last. This is good, her father said, examining the footage metadata, but it's 3 years old. We need current proof to bring them down. That's why we're going in. Sarah pulled up the blueprints of Meridian's new headquarters. Catherine's biometric access still works. She just needs to get to the executive elevator. And you trust her? Sarah thought of the burning car, of Catherine's eyes. I trust that she wants redemption. Sometimes that's stronger than loyalty. Her burner phone buzzed. Package at drop point. Tools you'll need. The drop point was a locker at the train station. Inside, they found everything. Security cards, maintenance uniforms, and a small device that looked like a mobile phone charger. Network sniffer, John explained. Picks up wireless security signals. Lets us clone temporary access cards. Sarah smiled slightly. Her mysterious helper was thorough. The plan took shape over the next hours. Catherine would enter through the lobby during shift change, using her old codes. Sarah and her father would go in through maintenance, using cloned cards. Their unknown ally would handle security cameras and alarms. Once we're in, Sarah traced the route on the blueprints. We have 12 minutes to reach the server room. Catherine downloads everything while we keep watch. And if something goes wrong? Sarah pulled out the final piece of insurance. A video she'd recorded that morning detailing everything they'd discovered. It was set to automatically upload to every major news outlet if she didn't enter a code every 24 hours. Dead man's switch, she said. Even if they catch us, the truth still gets out. Her father nodded approvingly. Mike would be proud. He always said you were the real fighter in the family. Sarah's throat tightened. On her phone was a recent photo of Emma, safe at her undisclosed location. Her daughter was smiling, but her eyes held a wisdom no 13-year-old should have to possess. I'm not fighting for justice anymore, Sarah said softly. I'm fighting for her, for the chance to give her back a normal life. Her phone lit up with another message. Time to move. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. shift change. Sarah began packing the equipment they'd need. Her father watched her, his expression a mix of pride and worry. "You know," he said, "when I taught you about security systems and survival skills, I never thought you'd actually need them." "Yes, you did." Sarah met his eyes. "That's why you taught me. You knew something like this could happen. Spent my whole career watching powerful people hurt innocent ones. Knew someday it might touch our family." He helped her check the network sniffer. "Just never thought it would be you leading the fight." Sarah thought of the waitress she'd been just days ago, worried about tips and late rent. That woman was gone, transformed by necessity into someone stronger, someone dangerous. Her father's training, Catherine's inside knowledge, their mysterious allies' technical skills, and her own desperate determination to protect Emma and honor. Mike's sacrifice. It was time to put it all together. "Tomorrow night," she said, studying the blueprints one last time, "we end this." Outside, a helicopter passed overhead. Routine patrol or surveillance, she couldn't tell anymore. But she was done running, done reacting. Tomorrow, Meridian would learn what happened when they pushed a mother too far. Sarah touched her wedding ring, then Emma's photo. Everything she'd lost, everything she was fighting for, condensed into 2 small tokens. "Ready?" her father asked. Sarah nodded, her voice firm. "Ready." The plan was set. The players were in position. And somewhere in Meridian's headquarters, evidence of countless deaths waited to be exposed. It was time to bring light to Project Lighthouse. The recording device in Sarah's maintenance uniform picked up every word as she moved through Meridian's lobby. Disguised as part of the cleaning crew, she kept her head down, pushing her cart toward the service elevator. Every conversation, every footstep was being preserved. More evidence for what was to come. "Evening shift starting now," crackled. Her earpiece, her father's voice, monitoring from the security feed they'd tapped into. "Catherine's approaching the main entrance." Sarah glanced at the lobby's revolving doors. Catherine Pierce walked in confidently, dressed in an expensive suit that matched the other executives heading home for the day. 3 years as a fugitive hadn't diminished her ability to project corporate authority. "Security scanner in 3, John warned. "Remember, you've got 1 shot at this." Sarah approached the service entrance, swiping her cloned card. The scanner beeped, processing. 1 second, 2, 3, green light. She was in. "Ms. Pierce." A security guard's voice rang out across the lobby. "Welcome back. Mr. Chen said you might be returning." Sarah's blood ran cold. She forced herself to keep walking normally toward the service elevator, but her mind raced. They knew, somehow they knew Catherine was coming. Of course, Catherine's voice was smooth, unruffled. "David. And I had some loose ends to tie up. He's waiting in the executive conference room. Let me escort you?" Sarah's earpiece crackled. "Abort," her father urged. "It's a trap." But Catherine was already moving toward the executive elevator, the guard close behind. If she aborted now, they'd lose their only chance at the servers. And... "Catherine, no," Sarah whispered. "We modify. Dad, can you still access the elevator controls?" "Yes, but..." "Then we change the game." Sarah pushed her cart into the service elevator. "They're expecting Catherine to be working alone. Let's show them what happens when she has friends." The service elevator carried her to the 30th floor. Maintenance. Access for the executive level. According to the blueprints, the conference room was directly across from the server room. If Chen was waiting for Catherine there, he'll have security with him, her father warned. Good. Sarah checked the taser concealed in her cart, along with other tools her mysterious benefactor had provided. More witnesses. She pushed her cart out into the executive corridor, keeping her head down as executives and security personnel hurried past. Everyone was heading toward the conference room, drawn by Catherine's return. Perfect. The server room door was unmarked, designed to blend in with the wood paneling. Sarah pulled out the network sniffer, watching as it grabbed the wireless signal from Catherine's security badge 5 doors down. Security credentials cloned, she murmured. Dad, kill the cameras in 3, 2, 1. The tiny red lights on the security cameras went dark. Sarah swiped the cloned signal. The server room door clicked open. Behind her, raised voices carried from the conference room. You really thought we didn't know? Chen's voice, smug and confident. That we couldn't. Trace your little breadcrumbs back to your conspirators. I work alone, David. Catherine, still cool under pressure. You know that. Do I? Then who's been helping the Martinez woman? Who's been leaving her clues, keeping her one step ahead of us? Sarah's hands flew across the server keyboard, starting. The download. 3 minutes until all of Project Lighthouse's secrets were copied. 2 minutes until the cameras came back on. 1 minute until... The server room door opened. I thought I'd find you here. Carol, her former neighbor, stood in the doorway, holding a gun with the confidence of someone who'd hidden their true profession for years. You're not the only one who can play dress-up, Sarah. Sarah's heart stopped. Carol, the neighbor who'd seen something the night Mike died, who'd tried to warn her at the post office, who'd been working for Meridian all along. You were watching. Us, Sarah said. All those years. Someone had to. Carol's aim didn't waver. After Mike started asking questions, we needed eyes on his family. Make sure you didn't go digging too. And when I pulled Catherine from that crash, a complication, one we're about to resolve. Carol smiled grimly. Mr. Chen would like to speak with both of you. The server download was at 89%. In the conference room, Catherine was still talking, playing for time. On the security feeds, her father was probably watching, unable to help. Sarah looked at Carol, really looked at her, at the way she held the gun, at her stance, at the slight tremor in her hand when she mentioned Mike. He got to you too, didn't he? Sarah said softly. Mike, he showed you something you couldn't ignore. That's why you tried to warn me. Carol's expression flickered. Don't. How many people, Carol? How many deaths have you helped cover up? The gun wavered. Behind Carol, a shadow moved in the hallway. A figure Sarah had seen before, in coffee shops and libraries, always watching, always helping from the darkness. Sarah smiled. The thing about butterflies, she said, reaching slowly for her cart, is that they're really good at creating distractions. The server display flashed, download complete. Everything happened at once. The death certificate lay on the conference room table between them, its official seal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Sarah stared at the cause of death. Vehicular accident. The same lie she'd believed for 3 years. Would you like to know what really happened that night? Chen smiled from behind his desk. Every inch the corporate executive, even as his world crumbled around him. How your husband actually died. Sarah's wrists hurt where they were zip-tied to the chair, but she kept her voice steady. I already know he discovered Project Lighthouse. You had him killed. Oh, it's much more interesting than that. Chen nodded to Carol, who pulled out a tablet. Show her. Security footage played on the screen. Mike in his paramedic uniform, moving through Meridian's old headquarters late at night. He was carrying a flash drive, the same one Sarah had found in the storage unit. Your husband was smarter than we expected, Chen continued. He found the patient records, traced the money, even recruited Catherine to help him. He glanced at Catherine, who sat bound in another chair, her face unreadable. But he made one crucial mistake. He trusted the wrong person. The footage shifted to a parking garage. Mike was meeting someone, handing over documents. The figure stepped into the light, and Sarah's world tilted sideways. Lisa Chen, the reporter, David Chen's wife. My wife played her part perfectly, Chen said. The crusading journalist, so interested in corporate wrongdoing. Mike gave her everything, files, contacts, access codes, even told her about the storage unit. No, Sarah whispered. Yes. And then, when he'd served his purpose, Chen spread his hands. Well, accidents happen, especially on dark roads late at night. Rage burned through Sarah's veins. You used her to trap him. We used everyone. Chen stood, walking to the window. Carol to watch you, Lisa to draw him out. Even Catherine's dramatic escape was part of the plan. He turned back, his smile fading. Until you complicated things by playing hero. A commotion outside made him pause. Security guards rushed past the conference room windows. Alarms began to blare. Chen checked his phone. That would be our other guest arriving. Your father's quite resourceful, but even he can't evade our security forever. Sarah's heart clenched. Her father must have tried to help when the plan went wrong. Now they had him too. Why are you telling me all this? She asked, playing for time. The downloaded files were still transmitting to their secure server. She just needed a few more minutes, because soon it won't matter. Chen nodded to Carol. Show her the rest. Carol hesitated, that same flicker of doubt crossing her face. So maybe we should show her. The tablet displayed a new document, Emma's birth certificate, but the names were wrong. Under father, where Mike's name should be, was another name entirely. Project Lighthouse wasn't just about developing weapons, Chen said softly. It was about creating perfect test subjects, children born with specific genetic markers, children like Emma. Sarah's world went dark around the edges. What did you do? Nothing yet. Emma's perfectly healthy, but her DNA makes her an ideal candidate for our next phase of testing. Why do you think we let you keep her all these years? We've been waiting until she was old enough. I'll kill you, Sarah whispered, and meant it. No, you won't. Chen's voice was almost gentle. Because, in about 3 minutes, this building's servers will undergo an emergency purge. All evidence of Project Lighthouse will be erased. And you, your father, and Catherine will be found dead, tragic victims of a murderous conspiracy against Meridian. Poor Emma will become a ward of the state, specifically a private medical facility owned by our Shell Corporation. Sarah looked at Catherine, whose eyes were fixed on something over Chen's shoulder, at Carol, whose gun hand was trembling more noticeably now. There's just one thing you forgot, Sarah said. Oh, Chen raised an eyebrow. What's that? I'm not the only one who's been recording this conversation. The door burst open. John Martinez stood there, very much not captured, flanked by federal agents, real ones this time. David Chen, a female agent, stepped forward, badge raised. FBI, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and about 24 other charges. We're going to enjoy listing. You can't. Chen reached for his desk drawer. I wouldn't, said a familiar voice. The mysterious figure from the shadows stepped into the light. Lisa Chen, looking very different from her reporter photos. The FBI has been building this case for 3 years, ever since my sister died in one of your lighthouse facilities. Sarah stared. Not Chen's wife, his sister-in-law. The real Lisa Chen, undercover FBI agent who had been helping her all along. You killed the wrong woman, Lisa said to Chen. The real Lisa would never have betrayed her sources. I've been playing you as long as you thought you were playing Mike. As agents swarmed the room, Sarah felt the zip ties being cut. Her father helped her up, his eyes full of pride and relief. Emma, she whispered. Safe, he assured her. Always was. That birth certificate was fake, just another way they tried to control you. Sarah looked at Chen, now in handcuffs, his corporate empire crumbling around him. At Catherine, being helped up by agents, ready to testify. At Carol, surrendering her weapon, choosing the right side at last. The nightmare was ending, but Sarah knew some truths would haunt her forever. The email thread, displayed on the conference room's giant screen, told the story of Meridian's downfall in real time. Sarah watched as FBI cyber teams accessed every server, every hidden account, every damning piece of evidence she'd helped uncover. 14 testing facilities, Lisa Chen, the real one, read from her tablet. Over 2,000 victims, money trails leading to defense contractors in 12 countries. She looked at Sarah. Your husband found the first thread. We've been pulling it ever since. Sarah studied the emails flowing past, correspondence between Chen and military contacts, transaction records, clinical trial data. The scope of Project Lighthouse was staggering. What about the other executives? She asked. Being picked up now. Lisa pulled up a map showing simultaneous raids across the country. Your infiltration forced them to trigger emergency protocols, gave us probable cause to move on all locations simultaneously. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. 2 agents were escorting Dr. Reynolds, Meridian's head of research, past the conference room. The man who had overseen the illegal trials looked small now, stripped of his authority. "You don't understand," he was saying. "The potential, applications, the medical advances. Save it for your testimony." One of the agents cut him off. Sarah's father appeared in the doorway. "They found the backup servers. Everything Catherine said about the foreign sales is confirmed." He looked at his daughter. "It's really over. But—" Sarah was watching Chen, still sitting handcuffed under guard. The CEO's composed facade had cracked, revealing something darker underneath as he watched his empire crumble. "You have no idea what you've done," he said suddenly, his voice sharp. "The people we work with, they won't let this become public." "Already is public," Lisa replied. She held up her phone, showing breaking news headlines. "Your cleanup? A team at the local station never got the chance to stop the upload. Every major network has the story." Sarah thought of all the families who had lost loved ones to Meridian's experiments. Of Emma, who had grown up without a father because he dared to expose the truth. Of Catherine, whose attempt at redemption had helped bring it all down. "Where is Catherine?" she asked, realizing the former CFO wasn't in the room. Giving her official statement, Lisa explained. 3 years of evidence, dates, names. Between her testimony and the server data, we'll be making arrests for months. Sarah's burner phone, her last connection to her old life, buzzed one final time. "Check your personal email. Em left you something else." She borrowed Lisa's laptop, logging into her old account. There, dated the day before Mike died, was an email she'd never seen. The subject line read, "For after, my love," it began. "If you're reading this, then what Catherine and I feared has happened. But you're stronger than anyone knows. Strong. Enough to find the truth. Strong enough to finish what we started. Most importantly, strong enough to keep Emma safe and show her that one person can make a difference, even if it costs everything. I love you both more than life." Attached was a video file. Mike's testimony about everything he'd discovered, recorded in secret. The final piece of evidence, hidden in plain sight all along. "He knew," Sarah whispered. "He knew they might kill him, so he made sure the truth couldn't die too." Chen lunged forward suddenly, his handcuffed hands reaching for Lisa's laptop. 2 agents tackled him as Sarah pulled the computer away. "You can't—" Chen's composure shattered completely. "Do you know how much we invested? The contracts we have, the people depending on, the only people that matter are the ones you killed." Sarah cut him off. She stood, facing the man who had ordered her husband's death. "It's over, Mr. Chen. The light's finally shining on your lighthouse, and there's nowhere left to hide." As if in response, more agents appeared with boxes of files and hard drives. Outside, news helicopters circled the building. Sarah's phone was flooded with messages from reporters, all wanting to know how a waitress and single mother had helped expose the biggest medical conspiracy in decades. But there was only one call that mattered now. "Mom?" Emma's voice was the sweetest sound Sarah had ever heard. "Dad, Grandpa says it's safe to come home. Is it true? Is it really over?" Sarah looked at her father, who nodded with tears in his eyes. At Lisa, who had helped protect them from the shadows, at the evidence of Mike's sacrifice finally brought to light. "Yes, baby," she said. "It's over. We can all come home now." In the background she could hear handcuffs clicking, agents reading rights, justice finally being served. But all that mattered was Emma's voice and the promise of tomorrow. The butterfly had emerged from its chrysalis, and nothing would ever cage them again. The court documents spread across Sarah's kitchen table told the story of justice in neat official language. Indictments, plea agreements, witness statements. 3 months after the raid on Meridian headquarters, the legal system was still processing the scope of Project Lighthouse. 12 executives pleading guilty, Lisa said, highlighting another document. Chen's holding out for trial, but with Catherine's testimony and the server data. She shrugged. His lawyers are already talking deals. Sarah sipped her coffee. Real coffee, not the instant kind she used to ration. The wrongful death settlement from Meridian had set her and Emma up for life, though she'd donated most of it to a foundation for the victims' families. What about the foreign contacts? She asked. The people Chen was selling to? Interpol's. Handling that side, we've got enough evidence to shut down operations in 6 countries. Lisa smiled grimly. Turns out your husband's detailed record-keeping started an international domino effect. A door slammed upstairs, followed by teenage footsteps. Emma bounded into the kitchen, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 13, she looked more like Mike every day. Mom! You have to sign this permission slip. We're doing a field trip to the courthouse to watch part of the Meridian trial. Sarah exchanged looks with Lisa. Your class picked that trial specifically, Emma grinned. Mrs. Peterson might have suggested it. She says it's important for us to understand how ordinary people can fight corruption. Sarah signed the form. Her heart full. Mrs. Peterson, who had helped keep Emma safe during those dangerous days, was still teaching her students about justice in her own way. Carol's testimony is scheduled for that day, Lisa mentioned after Emma left for school. She's been cooperative, helped us track down 3 more lighthouse facilities. Sarah nodded. Her former neighbor had chosen redemption in the end. Like Catherine, both women were receiving reduced sentences in exchange for their help dismantling the conspiracy. Have you thought about the book offer? Lisa asked. People should know the whole story, how a single mom took down $1 billion conspiracy. I didn't do it alone. Sarah picked up a framed photo from the counter, her father, Emma, and herself at the ceremony, where the FBI had officially thanked them for their help. Besides, some stories are better lived than read. Her phone buzzed with a text from her. Father, turn on the news. The kitchen TV showed Chen being led into court in an orange jumpsuit, his corporate polish finally cracked. The headline below read, Meridian CEO faces 147, counts of conspiracy and murder. They found the missing research staff, Lisa explained. A mass grave at one of the offshore facilities. Chen's lawyers can't spin that away. Sarah thought of all the families who were finally getting answers. The survivors of lighthouse experiments, who were receiving treatment. The whistleblowers who could finally come out of hiding. Mike would be proud, Lisa said softly. Of all of it. He knew the risks, Sarah replied. Knew what might happen. But he believed one person could make a difference. He was right. Lisa gathered her files. The congressional hearings start next week. New legislation for medical testing oversight. They're calling it the Martinez Act. After Lisa left, Sarah walked through her new house. Modest but secure. Paid for with legitimate settlement money. Emma's soccer trophies lined the shelves, along with family photos and her academic awards. Normal things. Safe things. The doorbell rang. Sarah checked the security camera, another habit she'd kept from her days on the run. Catherine Pierce stood on her porch, looking different in casual clothes, her testimony for the day complete. The prosecutors say I'm done, Catherine said when Sarah opened the door. No more hearings until Chen's trial. She hesitated. I wanted to thank you for helping me finish what Mike started. He'd be glad you finally came forward. Not just that. Catherine pulled out an envelope. The Victims Foundation you started. I'm signing over everything. All my offshore accounts, properties, everything I took from Meridian before I ran. She met Sarah's eyes. It's not redemption. But it's a start, Sarah finished. She took the envelope. Come in. Emma's been asking about you. As they walked inside, Sarah caught a glimpse of a dark sedan driving past. Lisa's FBI protection team still watching over them. Not out. Of fear now, but purpose, making sure no one else ever had to go through what they had. The butterfly effect, she thought. One small action leading to massive change. Mike had understood that, had given his life for it. And now, finally, his sacrifice had brought light to all the dark places where corruption had hidden. It was enough. 1 year later, Sarah stood behind the counter of her own diner, watching the morning regulars drift in. The new uniform still felt strange sometimes, owner instead of waitress, but the weight of her name tag anchored her to this new reality. Sarah Martinez, proprietor. She'd bought Mel's with part of the settlement money, keeping the name but transforming it into something brighter. The old flickering sign had been replaced, the booths reupholstered, the kitchen modernized, but the heart remained the same. Good food, fair prices, and a safe haven for anyone who needed one. "Order up," called a familiar voice. Carol, now on probation, worked the morning shift, part of her journey toward making amends. She'd proved to be a reliable employee. Her former investigative skills now turned to spotting customers who might need an extra helping or a sympathetic ear. The TV above the counter played news footage of Chen's sentencing. 25 years to life, with additional charges still pending. The Martinez Act had passed Congress with bipartisan support, ensuring no other corporation could ever exploit medical testing the way Meridian had. "Mom!" Emma burst through the door, teenage energy lighting up the room. "You have to see this." She thrust a paper onto the counter, her history project on corporate whistleblowers. An A+ marked the top, along with a note from Mrs. Peterson. "Excellent work, your father would be proud." Sarah hugged her daughter, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the lingering traces of childhood. At 14, Emma was growing into a remarkable young woman, her father's sense of justice tempered by her mother's hard-won wisdom. The diner's door chimed again. Catherine walked in, dressed casually, looking younger now that she no longer carried the weight of secrets. She'd served 6 months under house arrest, her testimony crucial in securing convictions for Meridian's entire executive board. Now, she helped run the Victims Foundation, channeling her financial expertise into healing rather than harm. "The foundation approved another round of settlements," she said, sliding onto a stool. 3 more families getting closure. Sarah poured her coffee. They'd developed an unlikely friendship, bonded by shared purpose and remembered loss. "How many does that make now?" "Over 200. But it's not just about the money." Catherine pulled out her tablet, showing Sarah a photo of a newly opened medical research facility. "The oversight committees are working. Real research, real trials, real hope." The door chimed once more. Lisa and Sarah's father entered together. They'd been dating for months, though neither would admit it. They brought news of more indictments, more justice, more light shining into dark corners. Sarah looked around her diner, at Carol serving plates piled with fresh hope, at Catherine working to heal what she'd helped break, at her father finding love again, at Emma growing strong and sure in a world made safer by truth. The morning sun streamed through clean windows, catching the small butterfly decal Emma had insisted they add to the diner's logo, a reminder of transformation, of survival, of flight after darkness. Sarah touched her wedding ring, then straightened her name tag. She'd kept both, carrying forward the best parts of who she'd been while embracing who she'd become. A young woman entered, looking lost and afraid, clutching a manila envelope like it contained secrets. Sarah recognized that look, had worn it herself once, before she'd learned to fight back. "Coffee?" she asked the woman, already reaching for a cup. "First one's on the house. And if you need someone to talk to." The woman hesitated, then sat down. Sarah poured coffee and listened, knowing that sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest moments of courage. Outside, the sun climbed higher over a city changed by truth. Inside, surrounded by family, both chosen and born, Sarah Martinez continued her husband's legacy. 1 cup of coffee, 1 act of kindness, 1 moment of justice at a time. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. fought for, won, and that made all the difference.